He was 16 the night his life split into before and after. The house was loud with angry words, the kind that had been building for years. Every small mistake he made had turned into proof that he did not belong. That night, it was a simple argument about school, about grades that were not good enough, about a future he was told he would never have. The voices rose, sharp and cold, until one sentence cut deeper than the rest. "You can't stay here anymore." At first, he thought it was just anger talking. Adults said things they did not mean when they were mad. But this time was different. The silence that followed felt final. A bag was pushed toward him, not packed with care, just stuffed with a few clothes and an old hoodie. No hug, no goodbye, just the door. He stepped outside before he could change his mind. The night air was colder than he expected. The door closed behind him and the lock clicked. He stood there for a moment, staring at the house he had grown up in, waiting for it to open again. It didn't. The porch lights stayed off. The windows stayed dark. He walked. He didn't know where he was going, only that standing still made everything hurt more. His phone buzzed once in his pocket. A message from someone he hoped would help. He typed back fast, explaining what happened, asking if he could stay the night. The typing bubble appeared, then vanished. No reply. He kept walking. The streets were quiet but not peaceful. Cars passed without slowing. Houses lined the road, warm and bright inside, like another world. He wondered how many people were sitting down to dinner, how many were laughing, how many had no idea a kid was wandering outside with nowhere to go. He tried another number, then another. A friend from school, a cousin he barely talked to, someone who once said, "If you ever need anything, let me know." The answers came back slowly, if at all. "Sorry. Can't. My parents said no. Maybe try someone else." With each message, his chest felt tighter. It wasn't just about a place to sleep. It was the feeling of being unwanted everywhere. By the time the sky grew darker, he reached a bus stop near a main road. It was old and cracked, the glass scratched and cloudy. The bench was hard and cold, but it had a roof, and that mattered. He sat down and hugged his backpack to his chest. This wasn't the plan. He didn't have a plan. He checked his phone again. Battery low. No new messages. He turned the screen off to save what little power he had left. The sounds of the road filled the space around him. Wind. Distant horns. The hum of tires on wet pavement. He tried to sleep, but sleep did not come easy. Every sound made him jump. Every passing shadow made his heart race. He pulled his hoodie tighter and told himself to breathe. Morning came slowly. The first bus arrived just after sunrise. People stepped inside, barely looking at him. One woman glanced his way and frowned, pulling her bag closer. A man shook his head as if the boy's presence annoyed him. No one asked if he was okay. When the bus left, the stop felt empty again. He stayed there through the morning. Hunger settled in like a dull ache. He counted the coins in his pocket. Not enough for much. He walked to a nearby store and bought the cheapest thing he could find. He ate it slowly, trying to make it last. By afternoon, people began to notice him more. A group of teens walked past, laughing. One of them pointed at the bus stop and said something he couldn't hear. Another took out a phone and aimed it in his direction. He turned his face away, pretending not to care, but his ears burned. An older man stopped nearby and looked him up and down. "You can't stay here forever," the man said, not unkindly, but not kindly either. "You should go home." He didn't answer. He didn't know how. As the day went on, the sky changed. Clouds rolled in, thick and gray. The air felt heavy. He noticed the wind picking up, pushing trash along the road. A weather alert buzzed on his phone. Storm warning. Strong winds. Heavy rain. He read it twice. The bus stop suddenly felt less like a bad choice and more like the only one he had. He looked around and started making small changes. He pushed cardboard against the open side to block the wind. He found a torn plastic sheet in a trash bin and draped it over the back, tying it with string he kept in his bag. It wasn't much, but it was something. A woman passing by laughed quietly. "Building a house now?" She said to no one in particular. Her friend smiled and shook her head. Kids these days. He kept working. By evening, the first drops of rain began to fall. Light at first, then heavier. The road grew shiny with water. Cars splashed past. He sat inside his small space and listened to the rain hit the roof above him. He thought about his room. The posters on the wall. The bed he would not sleep in tonight. He thought about how fast everything had changed. How one argument had erased 16 years of belonging. His phone buzzed again. A new message. "Are you okay?" He stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. "I don't have a place to stay." The reply came slower this time. "I'm sorry. I wish I could help." He turned the phone off. The rain grew louder. Wind rattled the glass. Water leaked through small cracks, dripping onto the ground near his shoes. He shifted to stay dry. His stomach growled. His head ached from thinking too much. People hurried past, holding jackets over their heads. No one stopped. No one asked as night fell. The storm settled in for real. The temperature dropped. His hand shook, not just from the cold, but from fear. He had never spent a night outside before. He didn't know what to expect. He didn't know how long this would last. He whispered to himself, words he hoped would sound strong. "Just get through tonight." The bus stop creaked under the wind, but it held. The plastic flapped, but stayed tied. He curled up on the bench and closed his eyes. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear and the shame, something else stirred. A quiet thought he didn't fully understand yet. If this was all he had, he would make it work. The storm outside grew stronger, and the boy stayed right where he was. The rain did not stop when morning came. It softened for a while, turning into a steady drizzle, but the sky stayed dark and low. The boy woke up stiff and sore, his neck bent at an odd angle from the hard bench. His shoes were damp. His hoodie smelled like wet plastic and dust. For a few seconds, he forgot where he was. Then a bus roared past, spraying water onto the road, and everything came back at once. He sat up slowly and rubbed his eyes. People were already moving again. Some waited for the bus. Others rushed past with umbrellas. Most of them avoided looking at him. A few glanced at the cardboard and plastic around the bus stop, their faces showing a mix of curiosity and judgment. One man laughed under his breath. "Creative," he muttered as he walked away. The boy pretended not to hear. He focused on pulling the plastic tighter where the wind had loosened it during the night. He did not want to think about how thin the protection really was. His stomach hurt from hunger. He checked his pockets again, even though he already knew what was there. A few coins. Not enough. He thought about asking someone for help, but the words felt heavy in his mouth. He had never asked strangers for anything before. He decided to wait. As the hours passed, the rain came and went. Sometimes the clouds broke just enough to let in pale light. Other times the sky darkened again without warning. He stayed close to the bus stop, afraid that if he left, he would lose the only shelter he had. Around midday, a group of students from a nearby school walked by. They wore clean clothes and carried backpacks that looked heavier than his entire life at that moment. One of them pointed at the bus stop. "Is that where he lives now?" The boy said, laughing. Another raised his phone and took a picture. "Bus stop house," he joked. "That's sad." The boy looked down at his hands. His face burned, but he stayed quiet. He told himself that reacting would only make it worse. When they finally left, The silence felt louder than their laughter. Later that afternoon, an older woman stopped a few steps away. She studied the bus stop carefully, then looked at him. "You should go somewhere else," she said. "People don't like seeing this." He nodded, even though he did not know where somewhere else was. "I will," he said quietly. She walked away without another word. By evening, the wind picked up again. Dark clouds rolled in fast, thicker than before. A weather alert buzzed on his phone, louder this time. Severe storm warning. Possible flooding. Strong winds expected overnight. He felt a knot tighten in his chest. People around him seemed uneasy. Cars filled the road as if everyone was trying to get home at once. A few people waiting at the bus stop complained about the weather, pulling their coats tighter. "This storm's supposed to be bad," someone said. "Yeah, they're saying it could get ugly," another replied. The boy listened carefully. When the buses stopped running for the night, the stop emptied again. Rain began to fall harder, slamming against the roof above him. The wind pushed from the side, sneaking through the gaps in the glass. He realized then that what he had built was not enough. He stood up and looked around. The street was quieter now, almost empty. Trash lay along the curb, soaked and scattered. He found a broken wooden board near a dumpster and dragged it back. It was heavy, but it helped block the wind from one side. He added more cardboard, layering it carefully. His fingers were numb by the time he finished. A car slowed as it passed. Someone inside laughed and pointed. "Look at that," a voice said. "He really thinks that'll work." The car drove off. The boy sat back down, breathing hard. He was tired, not just in his body, but deep inside. Every sound felt sharp. Every comment replayed in his head. Still, he kept adjusting, tying knots, pressing things into place. He did not know why he was trying so hard. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the simple need to feel some control over his life. The storm arrived before midnight. Rain poured down in sheets, heavy and loud. The wind howled, shaking the glass panels of the bus stop. Water ran along the road like small rivers. The boy pulled his knees to his chest and held the plastic in place with one hand. For a moment, panic rose in him. What if the roof broke? What if the glass shattered? What if the water came in faster than he could stop it? He closed his eyes and forced himself to breathe. "Stay calm," he whispered. Hours passed slowly. The storm showed no sign of stopping. Thunder rolled in the distance. Somewhere nearby, something crashed to the ground. He flinched but stayed still. At one point, voices echoed through the rain. A couple stood under a tree nearby, arguing. "We should have left earlier," one of them said. "I didn't think it would get this bad," the other replied. They ran off, slipping on the wet pavement. The boy watched them disappear. He wondered where they were going. He wondered if anyone was thinking about him at all. His phone buzzed again, the battery nearly gone. A message from a classmate he barely spoke to. "Are you really sleeping outside?" He stared at the screen. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Yes," he typed back. There was no reply. The wind slammed harder against the bus stop. The plastic rattled but held. Water leaked in, but slowly. He adjusted his position again, keeping his feet off the wet ground. Time lost its meaning. The night felt endless. Yet, somewhere in the middle of the storm, something changed. The fear was still there, but it was quieter. He realized he was still standing, still breathing, still thinking. He had made it this far. He thought about all the people who said he wouldn't last. About the laughter, the looks, the way everyone seemed so sure he would fail. A strange feeling settled in his chest, not anger, but determination. If this is my shelter, he thought, then I'll protect it. The storm continued to rage outside. The boy stayed awake, alert, holding his small space together with everything he had done. By the time the sky began to lighten just a little, he was exhausted, soaked, and shaking, but he was still there, and the bus stop was still standing. The storm did not end with the morning. The light that came through the clouds was weak and gray, as if the sky itself was tired. The boy opened his eyes and felt the cold first. His body ached from sitting curled up all night. His hands were swollen and stiff. When he tried to stand, his legs shook under him, but he was still there. The bus stop had taken a beating. Water pooled on the ground. Bits of cardboard were soaked and sagging. The plastic sheet clung to the side like tired skin. Still, the roof was intact. The glass had not shattered. His small shelter had survived the night. He let out a slow breath he did not realize. He'd been holding docked cars move carefully along the road, their tires cutting through water. Some drivers slowed when they passed the bus stop, staring longer than before. A few shook their heads. One person rolled down a window just enough to say something. "You're still here?" The voice called out. The boy did not answer. The rain eased for a short while, then returned, heavier than before. Sirens wailed somewhere far off. The air smelled like wet concrete and metal. He checked his phone. The battery was almost gone. Several alerts stacked on the screen, warning people to stay indoors, to avoid flooded areas, to prepare for more severe weather. He swallowed hard. Around mid-morning, the first real sign of trouble appeared. Water began to rise near the curb, creeping closer to the bus stop. It moved slowly, but it did not stop. The drain struggled to keep up, choking on leaves and trash. People walking nearby grew nervous. Some turned back. Others stood arguing on their phones. "This street's starting to flood," one person said. "I told you we should have stayed home." Another replied that the boy watched quietly. He lifted his backpack higher and moved his things to the driest corner. He remembered something his teacher once said about storms, about watching the ground as much as the sky. The wind returned with force. It slammed into the side of the bus stop, rattling the glass. The plastic sheet snapped loudly. For a moment, fear rushed through him again. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it over the rain. Then he moved. He tightened the knots he had tied the night before. He weighed down the cardboard with the wooden board. He pressed his shoulder against the weakest side to keep it steady. His arms burned, but he stayed there. A shout came from nearby. A man was standing ankle-deep in water, yelling into his phone. "I can't get through. The road's flooded." Another person slipped on the wet ground and fell, catching themselves just in time. Panic began to spread in small, sharp pieces. The boy noticed something important then. The bus stop sat just a little higher than the road. The water reached the edge but did not rush in. It pooled and moved around the concrete base, slower there. He did not know why, only that it mattered. More rain fell. A woman ran toward the bus stop, soaked and shaking. She hesitated when she saw him, her eyes flicking to the cardboard and plastic. "Can I stand here?" she asked, her voice tight. He nodded and stepped aside. Soon, another person followed. Then another. They crowded under the roof, pressed close to avoid the wind and rain. No one laughed now. No one pointed. The boy said nothing, but he shifted things quietly, making space, keeping the openings blocked. His hands moved without thinking, guided by instinct and hours of watching the weather. Thunder cracked loudly overhead. The sound made several people jump. "This is bad," someone whispered. Minutes later, the power went out. Streetlights flickered, then died. Stores across the road went dark. The world seemed to shrink into a small circle of rain, wind, and fear. Phones lit up the space as people checked messages and tried to make calls. Most did not go through. "I can't reach anyone," a man said. The boy leaned against the glass and listened. He felt strangely calm. Tired, cold, hungry, but calm. The storm no longer felt like something happening to him. It felt like something he was inside of, something he understood a little. The water rose higher. It crept closer to the bench, licking at the concrete. The woman who had arrived first looked down and gasped. "It's coming in," she said. The boy shook his head. "Not fast," he said. His voice surprised even him. "We're okay for now." They looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. Another loud crash echoed from down the street. Something large had fallen. Wind tore at loose signs and sent trash flying. The rain felt endless. Time passed in heavy chunks. At one point, a man asked, "How long have you been here?" The boy shrugged. "Since yesterday." The man stared at the shelter again, then at the rising water. He did not say anything else. Emergency sirens grew louder, then faded, then returned. Rescue vehicles could not reach every street. People under the bus stop waited, silent, listening to the storm. The boy stayed alert. He watched the water level. He watched the wind. When the plastic tore slightly, he fixed it with shaking fingers. When cardboard slipped, he pushed it back. No one mocked him now. As the storm reached its worst. Rain hammered the roof so hard, it felt like it might break. Wind roared through the street like something alive. The bus stop swayed, but held. The people inside huddled together. Some prayed quietly. Others stared straight ahead. The boy closed his eyes for one brief moment and thought about how close he had come to leaving this place earlier. About how people said it was nothing. Just a bus stop. He opened his eyes again. This is enough, he thought. After what felt like forever, the rain began to slow. The wind softened, turning from a roar into a long, tired sigh. The water stopped rising. No one spoke at first. Then someone let out a shaky laugh. "We made it," a voice said. The boy leaned back against the glass, his legs giving out beneath him. He slid down onto the bench, exhausted beyond words. Outside, the storm pulled away slowly, leaving behind silence, damage, and flooded streets. Inside the bus stop, a 16-year-old boy sat quietly, realizing something he would never forget. The shelter they laughed at had held and so had he. Morning came slowly after the storm, as if the day itself was unsure whether it should arrive. The boy woke to silence. Not the empty silence of the night, but a heavy, waiting kind. The rain had stopped. The wind was gone. Only the sound of water dripping from broken signs and tree branches remained. He sat up carefully. Every muscle in his body hurt. His hands were sore and cracked. His eyes burned from staying open too long. For a moment, he wondered if everything that happened during the night had been a dream. Then he saw the street. Cars were stalled in pools of muddy water. Trash was piled against curbs. A traffic sign leaned sideways, barely holding on. The air smelled sharp, like wet metal and dirt. People around him began to move. Someone coughed. Another person stretched stiff arms. They looked different now, quieter, slower. No one rushed away. A man cleared his throat. "Hey," he said, looking at the boy. "You did good last night." The boy blinked, unsure how to respond. "I just stayed," he said. The man shook his head. Most people panicked. "You didn't." Others nodded. The woman who had arrived first wrapped her wet jacket tighter and smiled at him. "Small but real. If you hadn't been here," she said, "I don't know what would have happened." The words landed heavier than any insult ever had. Sirens grew louder in the distance. Emergency vehicles finally began reaching the area. Workers in bright jackets stepped carefully through the water, calling out to people. "Everyone okay here?" Someone shouted. A few hands went up. People answered yes. Shaken but safe. An emergency worker stopped in front of the bus stop and looked at the setup. The cardboard, the plastic, the board holding back the wind. "You built this?" he asked. The boy nodded. The worker let out a low whistle. Smart thinking. For the first time since being kicked out, the boy felt something warm spread through his chest. Not relief. Not pride exactly. Something quieter. Something like being seen. As people were guided away to safer ground, some stopped to talk to him. You live around here? One asked. He hesitated. Not anymore. The person frowned. You got somewhere to go now? He shook his head. That answer no longer made people turn away. A volunteer offered him a bottle of water. Another handed him a small food bar. He thanked them both, his voice barely above a whisper. He had forgotten how good kindness felt. By late morning, the street was almost empty. Only workers and a few residents remained. The bus stop looked worn, its sides streaked with dirt and water, but it was still standing. The boy helped clean what he could. He picked up soggy cardboard and stacked it to dry. He moved debris away from the bench. No one told him to help. He just did. A reporter appeared around noon. The camera stayed off at first. The reporter talked to people nearby, asking where they had taken shelter. That bus stop, someone said, pointing. We stayed there all night. The reporter looked surprised. That kid kept it together, another person added. Didn't complain once. The boy felt his face heat up. He tried to step away, but the reporter noticed him. Can I ask how old you are? The reporter said gently, 16, he answered. And you stayed here the whole time? He nodded. The reporter paused, then lowered the microphone. We won't show your face if you don't want to. The boy appreciated that more than he could explain. By afternoon, word spread through the area. People talked quietly about the storm, about the flooding, about the bus stop that held. Some looked at him with respect, others with regret. A woman approached him slowly. I laughed yesterday, she said. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry. He nodded, unsure what to say. The apology mattered more than any long speech. As the sun finally broke through the clouds, the street began to dry. The storm felt farther away now, like something from another life. An emergency coordinator spoke to him near the end of the day. We can arrange a temporary place for you, the coordinator said. At least for a few nights. The boy's throat tightened. Really? He asked. The coordinator smiled. Really? Before leaving, the boy looked back at the bus stop. The place everyone had mocked. The place that kept him alive. He reached out and touched the cracked glass lightly. Thank you, he whispered, feeling foolish and sincere at the same time. As he walked away with the coordinator, wrapped in a borrowed jacket, people watched him go. Some waved. Some nodded. He did not look back again. For the first time since being told to leave, the future did not feel like an empty road. It felt uncertain. But possible. The place they took him to was not fancy. It was a small community shelter a few streets away from the flooded road. The walls were plain, the lights a little too bright, but it was warm. That alone felt unreal. The boy sat on a chair near the entrance, holding a paper cup of soup with both hands, letting the heat sink into his fingers for the first time in days. He felt safe enough to relax. A volunteer brought him a towel and showed him where he could wash up. The water from the sink ran brown at first, then clear. He scrubbed his hands slowly, watching the dirt swirl away. When he looked in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. His eyes looked older, tired but steady. He dried his face and took a deep breath. Later, he was given clean clothes and a thin blanket. He lay down on a narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. The room was quiet, except for soft footsteps and distant voices. No wind, no rain, no fear pressing against his chest. That sleep came fast. When he woke, daylight streamed through a small window. For a moment, panic rushed in, the old habit of waking up not knowing where he was. Then he remembered. The storm was over. The bus stop was behind him. He sat up slowly and listened. Life was still moving. Over the next few days, people came and went. Some stayed quiet, others talked nonstop. Everyone had a story. The boy listened more than he spoke. He did not feel the need to explain himself anymore. One afternoon, a worker sat across from him with a clipboard. "We'll help you get back into school," the worker said. "And we'll look for a more stable place. It won't happen overnight, but we won't drop you." The words mattered, not because they promised an easy future, but because they promised effort. He nodded. "Thank you." News of the storm lingered in the area. People talked about flooded roads, damaged shops, and power outages. Sometimes the bus stop came up. The one that held when others didn't. Single quotes to Dot. Someone mentioned the boy once, quietly. With respect. "That kid was smart," they said. He pretended not to hear. But inside, something settled. A week later, he walked past the street where everything happened. Cleanup crews were still working. The road looked smaller than he remembered. The bus stop was there, stripped of cardboard and plastic now. Back to being just a bus stop. He stood across the street and watched people wait for buses, like nothing had ever happened. He did not feel angry. He felt grateful. If the storm had not come, he might still be invisible, still mocked, still doubting himself. Instead, he had learned something no one could take away. That night, he sat on his bed and thought about the moment he was told to leave. The slammed door. The silence after. The fear. It still hurt, but it no longer defined him. He understood now that being kicked out did not mean being worthless. Being laughed at did not mean being weak. Surviving did not mean he had to become hard or bitter. It meant he had strength he did not know he had. Weeks passed. Life did not suddenly become perfect. There were hard days, paperwork, waiting, moments when doubt returned. But there were also small victories. A school meeting that went well. A warm meal. A quiet laugh shared with someone who understood. One evening, during another heavy rain, he stood by a window and watched water run down the glass. His body tensed for a second, memory rising fast. Then he relaxed. He knew how to endure storms now, not just the ones in the sky, but the ones that came without warning, the ones that tried to wash everything away. He pulled his blanket tighter and smiled faintly. Somewhere out there, people still remembered the bus stop, still remembered the night they laughed and the night they were wrong. As for him, he did not need their praise. He had survived, and that was enough. Life did not stop testing him after things became quieter. The shelter helped, but it was never meant to be permanent. After a while, he was moved into a shared place with other teens who were also trying to find their way. The building was old, the walls thin, and the rules strict, but it gave him something he had not felt in a long time. Stability. Every morning, he woke up early. Not because he had to, but because his body had learned not to waste daylight. He made his bed neatly, folded his clothes, and packed his bag with care. These small habits made him feel in control, even when bigger things felt uncertain. School started again. Walking through the doors that first day felt harder than facing the storm. People stared. Some whispered. A few recognized him from the night of the flooding. Others only saw a quiet boy with tired eyes. A teacher pulled him aside. "If you need time," the teacher said gently, "you have it." He nodded, grateful but determined. He worked harder than he ever had before. Not to prove anything to anyone else, but to himself. Every assignment finished felt like another brick laid under his feet. Something solid he could stand on. Not everyone was kind. One afternoon, he overheard someone say, "Isn't that the kid who lived at a bus stop?" The words stung, but they did not cut as deep as they once would have. He kept walking. He had learned that other people's voices did not get to decide his worth. At night, when the building grew quiet, memories returned. The sound of rain hitting plastic, the wind pushing against glass, the feeling of holding everything together with shaking hands. Sometimes he dreamed of it. Sometimes he woke up sweating, heart racing. On those nights, he sat up and reminded himself where he was. A room, a bed, a door that did not lock him out. Slowly, the dreams faded. Weeks turned into months. He found a small part-time job. Nothing special, but it paid a little and kept him busy. The first time he held his own paycheck, he stared at it for a long time. It was proof that he could rely on himself. During another heavy rain, he noticed something strange. Instead of fear, he felt calm. He stood by the window and watched the water fall, steady and strong, and thought about how far he had come. The storm had not broken him. It had shaped him. One evening, a staff member asked if he would speak to a new arrival. A younger kid, scared and quiet. Sitting alone. He hesitated. Then he sat down next to them. "I know it feels like everything ended," he said softly. But it didn't. The kid looked up, eyes wide. "You don't know me," they said. He smiled slightly. "I don't need to." The words surprised him as much as they seemed to help the other kid. Later that night, he lay awake thinking about that conversation, about how pain, when faced honestly, could turn into something useful. He did not see himself as a hero. He was just someone who stayed. One afternoon, while walking past the old street again, he stopped near the bus stop. It looked ordinary now, clean, empty. No cardboard, no plastic. Just a bench and a roof. People passed without noticing it. He stood there for a moment, then kept walking. He did not need to hold on to that place anymore. It had already given him everything it could. That night, he wrote something in a notebook he kept under his bed. "I survived. I learned. I keep going." He closed the notebook and turned off the light. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window. Inside, a 16-year-old boy slept without fear, ready for whatever came next. Time passed in a way that felt slow while it was happening, and fast when he looked back. The boy was still 16, but he no longer felt stuck at that age. Every week added something new to him. Confidence came quietly. So did patience. He learned how to wait without feeling like waiting meant failing. The shared place grew familiar. He knew which floorboard creaked, which window let in too much light in the morning, which corner was best for sitting alone when he needed space. It was not home, but it was safe, and that mattered. School continued. Some days were easy. Other days felt heavy for no clear reason. On those days, he reminded himself that healing was not a straight line. It never had been. He kept his head down and did his work. Teachers noticed the effort, not with praise that felt loud or embarrassing, but with small signs of trust. Extra time, a quiet nod, a look that said, "I see you trying." One afternoon, during a group project, someone asked him a simple question. "How do you stay so calm?" He thought about it for a moment. "I've been through worse," he said. That was all. Rain came again, months after the storm. Not violent, not loud, just steady. He stood by the window and watched it fall. The sound no longer made his chest tighten. It reminded him that storms could pass without taking everything with them. On weekends, he worked longer hours. He saved what he could, learning the quiet power of having something set aside for later. Independence felt good, even in small amounts. One evening, a staff member asked if he would help with a short meeting. Nothing official, just sitting with a few younger kids who had arrived recently. He agreed. They sat in a circle, awkward at first. The room felt heavy with unspoken fear. He recognized it immediately. "I won't tell you everything will be okay," he said, "because I don't know that. But I can tell you that today doesn't decide your whole life." The room stayed quiet. Then one kid asked, "Were you scared?" He nodded. "Yeah, I still get scared sometimes." That honesty mattered more than any advice. After the meeting, he walked outside alone. The air was cool, the sky clear. He thought about how different his life felt now compared to that first night outside. He no longer counted hours just to survive them. He planned. The bus stop crossed his mind less often. But when it did, it felt like a memory instead of a wound. A chapter, not the whole book. One day, he received a letter. It was short, careful, from someone connected to his past. It did not apologize. It did not explain. It simply asked if he was okay. That he read it once, then again. He did not answer right away. That night, he thought about everything he had learned. About strength. About silence. About choosing who gets access to your life. In the end, he wrote back one sentence. "I'm building something now." It felt honest. Spring arrived. The days grew longer. The world soft around the edges. He spent more time outside, walking without rushing. Noticing things he used to ignore. He realized something important then. Being kicked out had taken away comfort, but it had given him clarity. He knew who he was when no one was watching, when no one was helping, when no one expected anything from him. That knowledge stayed. One evening, while heading back from work, rain started suddenly. He laughed under his breath and pulled his jacket tighter. A bus passed and stopped nearby. People climbed on, tired and distracted. He waited under the shelter. Just for a minute. The roof was solid, the bench dry, ordinary. He stood there and smiled to himself. Somewhere deep inside, he knew this would not be the story he told forever, but it would always be the story that taught him who he was. When the rain stopped, he stepped back onto the street and kept walking. Forward. Always forward. The older he grew, the more he understood that some changes were quiet. They did not arrive with noise or attention. They showed up in small moments, in choices that felt ordinary but slowly shaped his life. He had been in the shared place for a while now, long enough to feel normal waking up there, long enough to forget what it felt like to panic every time a door closed. The rules still annoyed him sometimes, but he followed them. He knew what rules were worth breaking and which ones kept him safe. School moved closer to the end of the year. Final tests, projects, deadlines. Stress filled the halls, but he handled it better than he expected. When things felt overwhelming, he broke them down the same way he had broken down the storm. One step, 1 hour, one task. He passed his classes, not perfectly, not with praise or celebration. But he passed. That mattered more than anyone knew. One afternoon, he stayed back after class to help stack chairs. The room was quiet. Sunlight came through the windows in long lines. The teacher thanked him and asked what he planned to do next year. "I'm still figuring it out," he said honestly. "That's okay," the teacher replied. "Most people are." The words lifted a weight he didn't realize he was carrying. At work, he was given more hours. Someone trusted him enough to rely on him. He learned how to speak up when something felt wrong and how to stay quiet when it didn't matter. Confidence came from practice, not from pretending. There were still nights when memories returned. Sometimes it was the sound of rain. Sometimes it was laughter. Sometimes it was the feeling of standing somewhere unwanted. When those moments came, he didn't fight them. He let them pass. He had learned that pain loses power when it is not ignored. One weekend, the shared place organized a small cleanup day around the neighborhood. Nothing big, just trash bags, gloves, and people who wanted to help. He signed up without thinking. As he worked, picking up broken bottles and wet paper, he noticed something familiar. A bus stop. Not the same one, but close enough. He paused there for a moment, holding a trash bag in his hand. He remembered how it felt to sit under a roof that wasn't meant to protect him, and how it protected him anyway. He straightened the bench without realizing it. A younger kid noticed. "Why'd you do that?" the kid asked. He shrugged. "Someone might need it." That answer felt right. Later that day, he sat outside with a few others, sharing snacks and tired smiles. The air was warm, normal, safe. He thought about how different this moment would have felt months ago. Back then, he would have been waiting for something bad to happen. Now, he was just there. A letter arrived the following week. This one came from a local program offering support for teens who had faced housing trouble. They had heard his story through someone else. They asked if he would like to join. He read the letter twice. Then a third time. He didn't feel special. He didn't feel like a success story. He felt like someone who kept going. He accepted. The first meeting was small, quiet, no cameras, no speeches, just people sitting in a circle, talking about life as it really was. When it was his turn to speak, he didn't plan anything. "I didn't know I was strong," he said. "I just didn't have another choice." Heads nodded. That was enough. As summer approached, the shared place began helping residents plan next steps. Some moved on. Some stayed longer. Everyone carried their own timeline. He was offered a chance at a more stable place soon. Not perfect, not permanent, but closer to something real. He felt nervous. Change still scared him, but he also felt ready. One evening before leaving, he walked through the building slowly. He touched the wall near his bed. He stood in the hallway and listened to familiar sounds. Laughter, music, life. This place had held him when he needed it. Just like the bus stop once had. On his last night there, rain fell again, soft, gentle. He sat by the window and watched it. He did not feel afraid. He felt thankful. The world had tested him early. And had not won. When he turned off the light and lay down. He thought about tomorrow, about moving forward again. He smiled, small and real. He was no longer just surviving. He was building. And he wasn't done yet. The winter, after everything changed, did not feel loud anymore. It felt quiet in a new way. Not empty, but steady. The boy was no longer a boy, at least not inside. He woke up early each day, even when there was no alarm. His body had learned that mornings mattered. If he stayed in bed too long, the old fear came back. So he stood up, washed his face, and looked outside before the sun fully rose. The shelter he had built years ago still stood at the edge of town. People once laughed at it. They said it looked weak. They said a strong wind would tear it apart. They were wrong, but not because the shelter was perfect. It was because it was cared for. Every crack had been sealed by hand. Every loose board had been checked again and again. It was the same with him. He did not live there anymore. He had a small room now. It was plain, with one window and a desk that wobbled if he leaned too hard on it. But it was his. He paid for it himself. That mattered more than size. He kept the room clean, not because anyone told him to, but because order made his mind calm. On weekends, he still walked out to the shelter, not to hide, but to remember. The place held silence, and the silence felt honest. He would sit on a stone and listen to the wind move through the trees. Sometimes he fixed small things even when nothing was broken. It was his way of saying thank you. People in town had changed how they looked at him. Not all of them, but enough. Some nodded when they passed him on the street. A few stopped to talk. They asked about work, about plans. No one asked where he came from anymore. That question used to hurt. Now it simply felt old. He worked long hours. The job was not easy, and it did not pay much. But it paid on time. He learned new skills slowly, watching others, asking questions only when needed. He did not rush. He had learned that rushing often led to mistakes. When he made one, he owned it. That earned respect faster than excuses. There were nights when memories came back strong. The night he was told to leave. the way the door closed behind him, the cold air on his face. Those memories no longer knocked him down, but they still visited. When they did, he let them stay for a moment. Then he reminded himself where he was now. One evening, a storm rolled in without warning. Heavy rain, strong wind, the kind that made windows shake. Power went out in parts of town. People worried. He did too, but in a different way. His first thought was the shelter. He grabbed his coat and walked through the rain. By the time he reached the edge of town, his shoes were soaked. The shelter stood there, dark but steady. Water ran off the roof just as it always had. He checked the sides, the base, the door. Everything held dot as he stood there. Someone else appeared from the rain. Then another. A small group of people had come too. Some remembered the storm years ago. Some just wanted a dry place to wait it out. No one mocked it now. No one laughed. They stood together, listening to the rain hit the roof. Someone said quietly that this place had saved them once before. Another nodded. The boy said nothing. He did not need to. When the storm passed, people thanked him. He shrugged it off, but inside something warm spread through his chest. Not pride, something deeper. Peace. In the months that followed, he started helping quietly. Not in big ways. Small ones. Fixing steps for an older neighbor. Showing a younger kid how to use tools safely. Listening more than he spoke. People noticed, but he did not do it for that. One afternoon, a teenager sat near him while he worked on a fence. The kid did not say much at first. Then, slowly words came out. About being told he was useless. About not feeling wanted. The boy listened. He did not interrupt. When the kid finished, he only said one thing. You don't need permission to survive. The kid looked at him like those words mattered. Maybe they did. Years passed in a way that felt steady. Not fast, not slow. He saved money. He learned more. He failed sometimes, but not in ways that broke him. He learned how to rest without feeling guilty. He learned how to trust a little without giving everything away. One day, he was asked to speak at a small local meeting, just to share his experience. He almost said no. Standing in front of people still made his chest tight. But he remembered how alone he once felt. So he said yes. He did not tell the story to impress anyone. He told it simply. About being kicked out. About building something with his own hands. About storms. About staying. When he finished, the room was quiet. Then someone clapped. Then another. He felt his hand shake, but he stood firm. Later that night, he walked home under a clear sky. Stars were visible. He stopped for a moment and looked up. He thought about the boy he had been at 16. Cold, scared, unsure if tomorrow would come. He wished he could tell that boy one thing. Just one. You will be okay. Not because the world changes fast, but because you do. He kept walking. The road ahead was not perfect, but it was open. And this time, he was choosing it.